Good afternoon and welcome to Liquid Lunch with the Regional Water Authority. My name is Kevin Watsey and I am the Director of Public Affairs at the Regional Water Authority, but more importantly, I am your resident water nerd. Today, we have a pretty cool show. I'm really excited about this show. We're not going to be talking too much about water, maybe a little bit, but what we're going to be talking about is really a matter of public health. You may have heard us talk about lead in the water and in pipes on recent shows. Today we're going to discuss a more widespread lead issue, specifically here in the city of New Haven, and what folks can do to stop it and what the city is doing to stop it. We are talking about lead in household building materials and in lead paint and things like that, and what is causing lead poisoning in children, basically. Here to talk to me about that today is the New Haven Deputy Director of Environmental Health for Lead, Glenda Buenaventura. She's going to tell us all about what the city is doing to get rid of lead in people's houses and apartments and dwellings. So, Glenda, welcome to the show. As you and I talked before the show, I always like to start these things by really getting to know our guests and talking about their origin story. So with that, can you tell us your origin story? Tell us your story. Where'd you grow up? How long have you been doing what you're doing? What led you to what you're doing now?
Well, thank you for having me, Kevin. So I grew up in New Haven. I live in Hamden. I actually I was in the Connecticut Army National Guard for 6 years, and I was a preventive medicine specialist. I was doing something similar. I am doing something similar that I'm doing now today. So I joined right out of high school. And what we did is we did inspections of like the food establishments on base. We did a lot of education, preventative medicine kind of education. We inspected the barracks, the daycares that are on base. And then when I came back from serving, I went to school, got my bachelor's degree in public health. And then I worked at Yale New Haven Hospital for a few years, and then that's when I started 2002 with the New Haven Health Department. So I started in environmental health in the lead department as a data control clerk. So I just collected data about rates of like lead poisoning. And then in 2004, I became a lead poisoning inspector, and I was an inspector for 16 years. So then in 2020, I became a senior sanitarian. So instead of inspecting homes of children who have lead poisoning, we do the restaurants and all the events that you see around town, the fairs, even like on the green when they're having the food trucks. That's the kind of inspections that I did. Then in 2023, I became the Deputy Director of Environmental Health, and that's where I've been since.
So there's a lot to unpack there. So National Guard, so thank you for your service, first of all. I always say that because you had the guts to do what I didn't, which was to actually go into the armed forces and defend our country. I couldn't have done that. So thank you for your service. Second of all, so 2002 you started with the city. So you were 10 years old at the time?
No. How old was I? No, I think I was like in my early 20s. Probably, yeah. I've been there a long time. Sorry.
Oh. So it sounds like you spent a lot of your career doing like food establishment inspections. So
Correct.
So if we have questions about like foodborne illnesses and things like that, you could help us out with that too.
Yes.
So, what do I have to look out for if I'm in a restaurant? We'll go on to the lead thing, but I'm curious. Like,
Well,
if I'm sitting in a
here's my
restaurant,
thing.
what do you look for when you're in a restaurant?
I always say to people, you always have to eat at your own risk wherever you are, right? Because you can go to the cleanest, like something like with us, like a normal person, we can go in and we can say, oh, this place looks really clean, and I'm going to eat there. But people, you know how people really get sick is if those workers, they don't have like, if that establishment doesn't have some kind of a sick policy or hand washing policy. So you can go to a really clean place. If they don't have any of those policies or those systems in place, then you'll definitely get sick. So if they don't have a policy about coming to work healthy or sick, if you have an employee that comes in sick, that's how you're going to get sick.
And you don't see that from sitting in your booth out there, whether or not they're washing their hands.
No, and then like washing the hands too. Like if you don't have a strong policy and you don't stress to your workers the importance of hand washing, if they don't have signs about hand washing, if you have a sick employee going to the bathroom and they don't wash their hands and they're the ones touching your food, that's how really people get sick. So yeah, cleanliness is important, but that's how you really truly get sick.
So my wife is a bit of a germaphobe, and I I can't say that I've taken on all of her hysteria about it, but she has definitely made me more sensitive, especially when we'll go and we'll see somebody like take your money and then
Yes.
make your sandwich
Exactly.
without cleaning their hands or wearing
Exactly.
gloves or anything. And it's not something I ever thought about until I met my wife. And now it's all I think about, like,
Right.
especially in like the water with lemon. Like the
Yes.
lemon is, I've been told, and
Yes.
the lemon is probably the nastiest thing
You know
you
why?
can
Because
get.
if they don't wash and it's even at home, like, and
Yeah.
you'll see a lot of outbreaks have occurred like in the past, like with strawberries, right? Because if that irrigation water that they're using isn't clean, right? And
Yeah.
people aren't washing it, right? Same thing, same concept again. If you have a food handler that's going to the bathroom and not washing their hands, right? And it's bare hand contact with food that you're ready to eat. I'm the same way. I never order lemon with my
Yep.
water.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that was a little off topic,
Yes,
but it's still
but-
very educational because I think about it, and I think a lot of the newspapers actually will publish like the health inspections from the restaurants now, and whenever I see them, I read them because I'm always interested to see, and most of them sound like to me like minor violations. Like,
and
okay,
they are.
didn't keep the food at the proper temperature.
Well, that's important. That's a big
an
one.
important,
Though.
yeah.
That's a big one. Yeah, but like you'll see a lot of times and the thing is, I mean, I understand why they publish it, but at the same time, it's kind of like if you don't have someone that really knows what's behind those inspections that really happen, you can have a place that has. And the thing is, we don't even have number grades anymore because what happened was the state adopted the food code 2 years ago, a little less than 2 years ago. And so a lot of municipalities had a grading system in Naugatuck. You would see the A or the B or the
Yeah.
C. But sometimes what I always say, those letters are sometimes subjective to the inspector, right? If you had a really strict inspector and he wanted to mark everything, that number can go really low
Yeah.
really quickly and give you a bad letter grade or whatever, right? But they got rid of that. So throughout the state, there's no more grades, there's no more scores, nothing like that.
It's just the violation.
It's just a violation. It's really because the purpose of our inspection is to make sure that the establishment is in compliance. It's really not, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
oh, they
right,
have an
yeah.
A or a B, but because again, you, like me, looking at a place saying, wow, that place is really clean and I can eat there. But like I said, if they don't have those important systems in place, we can all get sick. Doesn't matter how clean, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter how clean.
How clean it looks.
Yeah,
Yes.
it does.
Yeah.
But what really matters is all that other important stuff.
So I promise we're going to talk about lead. But if you wanted to spend 6 minutes learning about food safety, there you go. I think it's an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
Before we talk about lead, I do want to ask you one question. So you're at the Department of Health in the city. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, what the scope of the department is, what the staff in the department looks like, what you're responsible for? So I don't know that a lot of people have a full appreciation that this department is out there literally protecting health and doing what you do. So can you spend a few minutes talking about that?
Sure. So the health department is fairly large. Like environmental health is just a small division of the health department. So the health department has about 100 employees, and 40 of them are school nurses alone. But the health department, again, environmental, we take care of lead poisoning, healthy homes, the restaurants, food service establishments. We also test the water, the beaches, every summer to make sure that they're safe to swim in. So
okay.
we're also responsible for that. But we also do AIDS prevention. We do drug overdose prevention. We have epidemiologists who, collect data on COVID cases, TB, flu. So again, environmental is just a small portion of the whole entire health department. And the biggest one is the clinic. So we have the clinic that's available for everyone, childhood physicals, immunizations, vaccines. So we also do that STD clinic.
Oh, wow. So the school nurses report into the Department of Health, not
Correct.
through the Board of Ed?
Yes, they are. They are under the health
Oh,
department.
is that typical?
I'm not sure.
I've never heard that before, so I
Yeah,
don't know
so
if
like
that's
we have the
normal
whole
or-
nursing department in our new office building, and yeah, so the nurses, we have the nursing director. I don't think we have one right now, but yeah, so they do again report. They're under the health department.
Oh, that's so interesting. So how many staff does the department have as a whole? Do you know off the top of your head? Sounds like
Around 100.
100?
Yeah,
Interesting.
and again, around 40 are school nurses.
School nurses. That
Yeah.
is so interesting. So there's a whole team of people out there protecting our health, and Yeah, I always think about COVID, as everybody does, and
Right.
how the health departments, that was,
Yes.
they were top, they were center stage during the COVID
Yes, we were there.
crisis.
So we worked really closely with, our Director Bond, and we obviously had to be very, current with the governor's like reopening. And remember, it was in different phases. So he would slowly reopen the state in different phases. But we had to be, knowledgeable of that, because then we wanted to get that information out to everyone here in New Haven.
Right.
And a lot of people unfortunately were not they didn't follow a lot of the governor's rules, like with the capacity and the mask
Right,
wearing.
yeah.
And so, we did shut down like a lot of places for not being, for not following those guidelines that the governor set forth. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I
Yeah.
did not envy health
Yeah, it's
workers
hard,
during that
yeah.
time. Yeah. So, let's talk about lead. Actually, before that, quick shout out to Director Bond,
Yes.
because since I've started with the RWA, I've met with her a handful of times, and she's kind of pointed out to me and made me kind of rethink how we communicate with our customers, and the fact that we're doing more communication in Spanish, and
Right,
with
yeah.
Lavos we did some ads and things
Right,
like
yeah.
that. So that is directly from my meetings with her, to
Yeah.
kind of her telling us, make sure you focus on that.
Yes.
And so quick shout out to Director Bond. When I started with the RWA, and the reason I wanted to have this discussion is I was told that New Haven had one of the highest pediatric blood lead levels in the state, and I want to kind of dive into that a little bit, because to me it's interesting. So I'll start with the most basic question: how do we know that?
Well, because we know it because of the number of children who actually do have lead poisoning. So I'll get into that later. However,
Yeah.
one of the biggest reasons why we do have that is because of our old housing stock. Over 80% of our housing stock here in New Haven was built before 1978. That's a lot of housing. And so unfortunately, with most of our housing being leaded, a lot of the kids that we do have here are lead poisoned. And the reason what we know that is, so children, it's a law that children have to get tested for lead between the ages of 9 and 35 months. So when they're going to the pediatrician for their yearly physicals. And normally what a lot of pediatricians do is they do like a finger stick.
So it's
every
just like
year.
a little droplet.
Yeah, a little
Okay.
droplet. And what happens is if that level is elevated, they'll do a confirmatory testing, which is blood drawn through the vein. And that's how we know the number of lead poisoned children we have. And what happens is the lab and the doctor's offices are required to report lead levels to the state health department. And with the state health department and the local health too, but what the state health department has is a lead database surveillance system. It's called MAVEN. And all the children's levels throughout the whole entire state go into that system. And so
Gotcha.
obviously the state will do their data and they'll do comparisons. And New Haven is always like the top 3, if not the first one that has the highest levels. We're up there with, say, Bridgeport, Waterbury, the bigger cities.
And it's the housing. So is it paint mostly, or does it go
Both.
beyond paint? Or?
So I always say it's defective paint and
Okay.
cleaning. So that's the thing.
Okay.
What people have to remember is paint is dangerous when it's defective. That's it. And then you have to clean, because what happens is it's paint and dust, lead dust.
Okay.
It's the dust that's generated from the friction you create with defective lead paint. So for instance, if you go into a really old home and you see the old original windows, and if you ever open it, you'll see that there's a lot of paint chips.
Right.
And the window jambs are deteriorated. It looks like alligator skin or crocodile skin. That's what lead paint looks like. And and it's defective, so when you keep opening and closing it, friction surface, it's going to create
creating
dust. And truly, children get sick from lead dust because you can't see it. You can't always see it, and it's all over the place. So it's always hard to see when your child is ingesting it. And the reason why it's more important for children 6 years old or under, actually 2 years old, is because they're still learning how to walk, they're crawling, right? And what are they doing? They're putting everything into their mouth.
So I'm so glad you said that, because honestly, my impression was that it was from children just eating
Eating paint chips. Yes,
chips. But
yeah.
I didn't think about the dust. And I learned, so full disclosure, Glenda and I were on a panel a few weeks ago, and one thing that I kind of took away, and I went home and told my wife, was that lead paint tastes like candy.
It's sweet, yes.
It's sweet, so that's
Yes.
why. So you wonder, like, well, why is a child eating
Yeah.
these paint chips? I didn't know that. So lead
Correct.
actually has a sweet taste
Correct,
to it,
and
which is
yes.
why,
And then when you have children who have like pica, when that's a tendency to put like everything in their mouth, if paint chips is one of them and it's sweet, they're going to continue to put it in their mouth, right? And so one of the ways to remedy that is there's something called liquid encapsulant paint. It's a special paint that you use for lead paint.
is that
it
like
has
Kills, or is that like a
something? No,
a
I know what you're
completely
talking about.
different-
It's
yeah.
completely different.
Okay.
It's and the state of Connecticut, we only approve certain brands of liquid encapsulant paint. So you just can't use any
Okay.
liquid, because there's a lot out there, and there's only several that are approved, and the state has like a list. But there's supposed to be Bitterex in the liquid encapsulant paint, so that if, God forbid, a child does chew it, it has a bitter taste to it, so that they won't have, they won't want to eat it because it's not sweet anymore. But yes, it is sweet.
So two quick side stories, one about lead and one about bitter. So at another water company I worked at in a different state, I'm not going to say which one, we were getting ready to repaint one of our water towers. And water towers only need to be painted every 20 to 30 years. So there's still a decent amount of water towers out there that may have lead paint on them. And so this particular tower did have lead paint on it. And when they do those towers, they have to set up this zero, like a vacuum system.
Yeah.
So that all the dust gets sucked
Right.
up. And, well, the containment broke.
Oh,
And my company had to, within a 1 mile radius
Yes.
of that tank, had to test every
Yes.
single backyard soil.
yes.
Most of it had lead above
Yeah.
the levels. My company had to spend millions of dollars
Mhm.
remediating the soil in these backyards
Yeah.
because of that
Yep.
containment breach. And my company, it was really the paint company, because we made them pay for it because it was their breach. But so that kind of gets at the dust thing. The other story you mentioned about bitter, I was just listening to the radio this weekend, and I think it was Duracell had a commercial where now these little button batteries,
Mm-hmm.
they're actually putting like a bitter taste on the batteries so that if kids try and
Right.
eat them, it tastes bitter. And they're putting a coating on it so that once it touches saliva, it turns the mouth blue.
Wow.
So that parents can
Could see
tell
it.
that their
Yes.
kid had a battery in their mouth.
Right.
So
But you're right.
related
as-
but unrelated.
but like no, but it's true. Exactly what you said. Like you pretty much can see. You know what I mean? Like putting something in their mouth, but dust you just can't.
Yeah,
That's
so
why.
you're breathing it in.
Yeah, you're ingesting it. You're inhaling it. But that's the thing about. So yes, like defective lead paint, definitely it's bad, but it's really simple cleaning or wet cleaning. But even back to your story about the containment that failed. I've seen it like working for the city for a long time, but I've seen it happen before where people are just doing regular, like our panel, doing renovation work that they're thinking is completely innocent. But when they don't know what they're doing incorrectly, and they're dry sanding, like just say someone's
Yeah.
outside and they're dry sanding their siding, which is most likely lead-based paint on that clapboard siding, it's going to get into everywhere. The dust, the paint chips, it's going to fly all over the neighborhood. And I've been in a situation with the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, had to come down. The same thing happened in your situation where they had to test. What if there was a school and those kids were playing
Right.
outside? Or what if the next door neighbor, their window was open and, you were sanding and they come home, there's all that lead dust. And you're just thinking, oh my, whatever. And then the kid is playing at the windowsill. And truly it's, even like with your windows, right? When kids look out the window and their little hands are touching the windowsill, and then say they don't wash their hands before they go to eat. That's how they get
Yeah.
lead poison.
Connected to our first part of
Yes.
the discussion. There you go. See, it
Yeah.
all connects in the end. So I want to. This is how my brain works and how I think we can move forward in this conversation. I want to play the part of a parent, right? And kind of ask the questions that I would ask. Yeah, I am a parent, but ask the questions I would ask. So the first question is, if I have a toddler running around the house, and maybe I haven't had the blood tested yet, what signs would I look for that there may be some kind of lead poisoning in my child?
See, well, the crazy thing about lead is that you may not know anything,
Okay.
right? Sometimes, but like maybe speech delay, like just delay in like school, being lethargic, maybe that's the thing. It can mimic a lot of other
Okay.
ailments. You know what I mean? Because they can have excessive diarrhea, they can have constipation, difficulty sleeping, difficulty concentrating. But it mainly affects their learning and their thinking.
Their
That's
brain
what lead
development.
does.
Yeah.
That's why although lead poisoning is, important for adults, it's more so children because their brains are still developing. That's why the age is 6 and under 6 years old, I mean, because the brains are still developing.
And if I do suspect that my child has an issue, do I call the Department of Health? Do I go to the
No, you
doctor?
get tested.
So I go to
Right.
my doctor.
So remember, mandatory testing, it's the law. So as soon as your child is 9 months old, between 9 and 35 months old, they should be getting that finger stick to get tested for lead. Even beyond that, between 9 and 35 months old, but also like pediatricians, they'll ask you, so what about your living? Like, was your house built before 78? Like, maybe the neighborhood is predominantly having, a lot of, you know what I mean? So even if you're over 35 months old, they should be testing like every year. But if you're living in a high risk neighborhood, they should definitely be testing too.
Well, and I think there's some communities where, I mean, let's be honest, folks, they may not have health insurance.
Right.
They're not taking their kids to the doctor on that prescribed schedule that you should. So they may not be getting that testing when they're supposed to. So it's good to know that there are some signs that you should look out for. But definitely the first stop is to go to the doctor, not to call the Department of Health.
No, because so for us, we go out to do a full comprehensive lead inspection when a child has a blood lead level of 5. It's called 5 micrograms per deciliter of whole blood, and that's blood taken through the veins. And again, we get that information from Maven, the state health department.
Gotcha.
That's how we know when to go out to do inspections. Because again, when the children are going to the doctor's office, they're reporting their blood lead levels to the state. So that's why it's important. That's the only way we'll know.
Right.
That's the only way parents will know, right? If you're concerned about your child having lead poisoning and they haven't been tested and they're over, say, 35 months old, ask for a blood test from the doctor. But again, they'll probably do like a finger stick first. But a confirmatory level is when the blood is taken from the vein. So we go out when the child's blood from the vein, again, is 5 or above.
So now the doctor has done the test. Both tests have confirmed my child has lead poisoning. Before we get into the abatement side, what does the doctor do? Is there treatment for it?
There's no treatment. The only time there's really treatment for it is when, unfortunately, if a child has a blood level of a 45 or above, that they have to be hospitalized. They have to go through something that's called chelation therapy. And obviously, we don't ever want a child to go through that because that's a scary thing, and that's really bad. That's a really high level for a small child to have that high of a level. And then the thing with that is they have to be relocated immediately. And before they go back home, we as a health department have to make sure that wherever they're going home to is lead safe, because they're very vulnerable right now with their lead levels. Anything they do can make that level go up. Yeah. But as far as treatment, as far as preventing it, again, simple cleaning methods at home, right? Making sure if there's any defective paint that it's intact, but if you see defective paint, keep your child away from there. But it's also simple things like having a good diet. Diets high in foods high in vitamin C, vitamin D, and foods high in iron. Before it used to be, I don't know if you remember, I know with my children, I used to give them those vitamin drops with the iron in them. It would stain their clothes, right? But yeah, you want to be able to give them vitamins too, that have iron. But obviously, you have to ask your doctor first, because if you give too much iron without
So will the iron counteract the lead?
Yeah, it'll help. Yeah, that's why we want their diets to be high in iron, calcium, vitamin D.
Yeah, because that was my next question.
Yeah.
So if the doctor says my child is at 20,
well, that's pretty high. Yeah.
but not high enough to get treated, right?
Right.
So
and
then,
it depends on the child too.
Okay. Depends.
Yeah.
So because now I'm a parent and I'm scared because my child has lead poisoning, but not high enough to get treated in the normal sense. So what do I do? I'm a concerned parent now. What do I do? Is it a diet, and then it kind of takes care of
that's
itself?
something that you can do. But as far as us, now we have to check the environmental part of it. Is there some? So that's when we come in. So by law, by our own ordinance, we will go out if a child has a level of 5 or above, and we'll go out to do a full lead inspection. So when I say full lead inspection is, we have a machine. It's called an X-ray fluorescent machine. And we're going to test every single room. That's every painted surface in your room, within your house, the common areas, the exterior. And we test every painted surface to see if there's lead. Then we take dust wipe samples, because again, remember, dust. We want to be sure that there's no high levels of dust anywhere in your windows and on the floor. We'll do soil samples, so we'll take soil samples for anywhere where there's bare soil. Because again, when you have a house that has clapboard siding and it's defective, you'll see a lot of times that there's paint chips in the soil. And then what happens is if you're walking on that bare soil, you're tracking that into the house.
Right.
And then the last one, your favorite, we test the water.
Test the water.
For lead.
Yeah. and if you could indulge me, has water ever been revealed
No.
to be the cause of lead
No,
poisoning? Thank
never.
you.
And as long as I've been doing them, never has it come up as having elevated levels of lead in water.
Yeah, we're going to isolate that part. And that's the only part of this interview that's going to go out. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so
then when we
I
do
have
the
so many
inspection,
more questions.
but so when we do that inspection, so just doing the physical inspection, we also do what's called like an epidemiological questionnaire. So we'll ask, it could be, where does your child play? What about occupational? What do you guys do for a living? Are there any other adults that live here? Does the child go anywhere else? Does it go to grandma's house? It could be a
Right.
whole lot of things, but back
they
to
may not be getting it
Right.
at home, but they're getting
right.
it.
Or it may not be the home. It could be something someone in the house is doing, whether it be an occupation or a hobby. What if somebody in the house likes to go to the firing range, and when they're going there, they have it on their clothes? What if somebody is a construction worker? Maybe they work at bridges, or maybe they do work with that kind of stuff.
Right.
And kids, and I've seen that before, where parents don't change their clothes before coming home if that's the kind of work or activity that they're doing, and it's all over their clothes.
Give your kid a big hug.
And then what happens,
He's
right, when you
breathing it
come
in.
home? Exactly. And then
Interesting.
even with the tracking into the house, that's why we always say leave your shoes at the door. If you have an animal like a cat or a dog that likes to run the streets and they're walking into someone's lawn or their yard and there's bare soil, and what if the dog or the cat or whatever animal, they're walking and someone's doing construction work 3 houses down from you, and the dog is walking around? They're going
Yeah.
to track that into your house now. And then again, it goes back to what if your kids' toys are on the floor and they're putting it in their mouth?
Is this? I still have so many questions. Is this a long-term kind of exposure thing? So, in the scenario you just talked about, my dog goes out, gets lead dust all over its little paws, comes home, and then
Even on him.
yeah, and then my kid
Hugs
hugs
it.
the dog once,
Yeah.
but then we wash the dog and say it never happens again. Do I have to worry about my kid just from that one exposure, or is it really a long-term
No,
exposure
it could
thing?
be, you just never know. That's why
Okay.
it's like, you know what I mean? That's why it's important for children to get tested that early.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
why it's good to get tested like
That's interesting.
every year, right? And then that's why it's important for when they go to the doctor, when they ask you, hey, so, was your house built before 78? Any renovations being done? Sometimes children get sick just from that because, the landlord decided, I would do something to the house, right? Just something normal that they're doing, like a normal maintenance, or they want to upgrade the house. But maybe the people that they hired were not doing it, correctly or whatever. And unfortunately, kids get sick like that too.
I'm glad you mentioned landlord, because that's actually my next question. So, if I live in an apartment, are you, and my child has elevated lead levels, are you working with me as the renter, or are you working with the property owner? Both.
You, because obviously you're the parent, and you
Right.
need to know what to do as a parent to prevent it, right? So what happens is, like, back to your question about what about me? You told me that I have lead, right? So we're going to go in there, we're going to educate you. We're going to tell you, we're going to do your inspection, we're going to let you know what we found. And let's just say you say to me, you know what? My child really loves to play on this window. And then we look and we see that it's a leaded window. We're going to obviously tell you, keep your child away from there until the landlord can do something about it.
Does the property owner have the right to deny you access? No.
Well, it's so you as a tenant, you have to give me access to your
Okay.
unit, not the landlord.
So I can say yes, and it doesn't matter what the landlord says.
Absolutely. But
Okay.
no parent will ever deny us coming in because we're there for the safety of your child. But if your child has lead poisoning and you don't want us to come in, then that's a problem too, because we have to get in there
Yeah,
to
I was
do an
going to ask
inspection.
that because I imagine some parents may almost take that as a threat because they think I'm in trouble. My
Yeah.
kid has lead poisoning. I'm in trouble. You're going to arrest me. I don't want you coming
Yeah.
in. Does that happen a lot, or am I just watching
It's
too
no,
much
it's
Law and
happened
Order?
before, and sometimes people are not trustworthy of government,
government, right.
right? And that's understandable, but that's why like we as inspectors, we have to. That's when we have to come in and educate and let them know that we're here to work with them, like not against them. We're there to help them. That's truly what we're there for. We're there to help. We're there to figure out where the child is getting lead poison and what we can do to help you avoid it. And it also it's the same thing for the property owner too. Like we're not there to, work against them. We want to work with them so that they can get their property, lead abated properly, and that they can be in compliance.
So, you may not know the answer to this, but can I sue my landlord for not, for basically not having this taken care of before I moved in? I don't know if you know the answer yet, but I'm just wondering, like, if I get an apartment and I think everything's fine and now my child has lead poisoning, do I have any case with the landlord? Do you know that? I don't know. Maybe I'll
So
go
that's
to
a landlord-tenant issue.
Yeah, that's out of your
happened,
purview.
Yeah, but but it has happened before. But one of the things I could say, maybe I'm going off the subject, but one of the things that people have to remember is just because we find lead, the landlord cannot kick you out. He can't say you have to move out because we found lead. Like
Okay.
that, he definitely cannot do that.
Oh, that's good.
Right. But we also, as a health department, again, our goal is to figure out where the lead is. But we don't get involved in as far as like if the tenant's like, well, can you tell my landlord that we have to move out? Like we don't get in the middle of that. That's right, because
Yeah.
if you guys have a lease or whatever, that's between you and them and
That's
whatever.
a different department.
That's
of
a
the
whole
city.
different department. What we care about is that the child is is safe and that the home that they're living is safe. Now, I do say though that it's really dependent on each situation, because just because we find lead, doesn't mean you have to move out, but it's also depending on the severity of how much lead we found in the
Right.
unit. It's all very dependent. Yeah.
So can I go to Home Depot and just get a test and
No.
test this myself? No, I can't.
No.
Why not?
I mean, you can,
Uh-huh.
but let's just say this: if your house was built before '78, you should just assume that all the paint in your home is leaded unless it was professionally tested. Because the reason why I say don't get it too is because the state doesn't recognize those tests. You can use it just for informational purposes, but that's basically it.
But it's not.
It's
it
nothing
doesn't
that
count.
no, like we don't use, like, you know what I mean, and it's not recognized by the state. But again, unless like you're the homeowner and you know exactly what happened in that house and you did renovation, right, and you're just curious, you can pretty much assume that it's a house built before '78. There's going to be lead paint somewhere in there, unless again you did like a complete like gut rehab down to the studs of your whole inside. But I say that too because the outside will still have it. If you have clapboard siding,
Right. So
Yeah.
you made me think of another question, which I didn't plan on asking, but it's something I would ask if I thought I had this problem. So say my house was built in the '60s. It may have 2 or 3 layers of lead paint, but then it has like 6 or 7 layers of latex paint over
Yep.
it. I assume it could still be an issue,
Yes.
right? Even if I have multiple layers of non-lead paint. over
because
it.
the machine that we use will read right through it. It's going to bear to the it's going to read to the surface.
But it's still because of dust and friction and all that, and it. So I guess my point is, even if you've painted your walls very recently, unless you stripped it down to the drywall or whatever, lead could still be an issue, correct?
Yes. However,
Unless you
have to-
use that paint that you talked
well,
about.
no, but even when you do that, it'll still show up when we
Oh,
test
it'll show
it.
up in your test.
But the thing is, remember, lead is only dangerous when it's defective. So if you're talking about, we do an inspection, right? And remember I told you we inspect every painted surface. So remember, we're doing the ceiling, all 4 walls, baseboards, all parts of the door, the windows, inside your closet, everything. If all your walls are intact, right? But there is you don't have to do anything with it.
Okay. So if you're not seeing any kind of friction area or chips,
Correct.
then it should
Same
be
thing with
okay.
the outside. If you have a pristine exterior of your house and it's clapboard, but we know that it's lead, you don't have to do it because it's intact. again, the only time that a owner is obligated to do anything is if it's a defective leaded surface. But if these walls were like this or whatever, and it was lead, then you'd have to make it intact, and then put liquid encapsulant paint on it, or you can put sheetrock over it. And then if you have doors that have it, things that are friction surfaces, you'll have to, whether it's intact or not.
So this is so interesting. So I want to get back to the one question. So now my child is tested positive. The city has come in and say the city has found that I have some walls where it's been disturbed, and the city's pretty confident that it's the house that caused the lead poisoning. Everything you're talking about sounds pretty expensive. Does the city have programs, or like how, as a homeowner, can I abate this lead without, going into the courthouse?
So let me go back. So when we do an inspection, there is a cost to the property owner for that inspection.
So if I rent, then it's the landlord?
Correct.
Not. Okay.
No, it's not you. No.
Okay.
But yes, the owner, because what happens is when we go do an inspection and we do find lead, the property owner gets what's called the lead order letter. So he'll get one for the paint inside the house, and if we find it in the soil. One of the things you have to remember is what triggers our lead ordinance and the state regulations. So remember, City of New Haven, we have our own lead ordinance. And then we have the state regulations for lead poisoning. If there's a child in residence under 6 years old and we find defective lead paint or lead in soil, then the property owner will get what's called an order. And that order goes on the property records, serves as a lien. So you can have a property owner's like, well, you know what? The tenants moved out. I'm not
fixing it.
But guess what? If you try to refinance and you try to sell your house and your lawyer does the title search, then they call the health department. Oh, there is this order here, and well, he's got to do the work first, and then we'll release it. But then we do have funding available
Yeah.
to help the property owners with lead abatement. So we have our lead hazard control grant, and that is good until 2027. So there's still some time. And then we have that money available for property owners. And what happens is the tenant has to income qualify.
Okay.
If you're the property owner and it's your unit, you know what I mean? It's your child that got lead poison, then you as a property owner will have to income qualify. And then you'll get up to $15,000 per unit for lead abatement. And I mentioned it at our panel too. And sometimes it will have to go over, because especially when you have a historic house.
Right. Yeah.
And also
there's a lot of those in New
Right.
Haven.
There's a lot of that in New Haven. And then it also depends on how big or small your property is. And remember, it's $15,000 per unit. So, you can get one for one unit, but if you want to put all your other units through the program, those tenants would have to income qualify. But I also wanted to point out, most recently, and this happened after our panel, so in addition to our lead hazard control funding, this is money directly from HUD, and it's a 5-year forgivable loan, and 20% is forgiven every year. The state actually came out with their own funding. They have ARPA funding for lead abatement. And the main difference between our funding and theirs, there's no income limits. There's no income guidelines.
Oh, okay.
And where for us, ours is for children who have lead poison. Theirs is too, but they can go into a home and there's just a pregnant individual. Doesn't have to be a child. And the home is approved for daycare or foster care.
Oh, okay.
So those are the key differences. Obviously, their priority is for those children who are lead poisoned, but we obviously want them to use our funding.
Yeah.
But this is truly for those cities that don't have any funding available. And one of the reasons why the state also came out with this, as I wanted to bring up too, was that where the city goes out for a child who has a level of 5, the state will be at a 5. The whole entire state will be a 5 come January 1st.
Oh, okay.
So
what is it now?
Right now, they're at a 10.
A 10, and New Haven's at a 5.
We were in a 5. But what happened was the state gradually went down.
Mm-hmm.
They did a phased-in method. When I started, lead poisoning was a 20 and above, right? And then it went down to 2 levels of a 15, taken 3 months apart. Then they went down to a level of 15 in 2023. Yes, 2023, just one level 15. And then this year, January 1st, 2024, it went down to a level of 10. And then next year, January 1st, it'll be a level of a 5.
Interesting.
And so what happens is in those cities where they didn't have high levels like New Haven does, they could have gone from like say 1 child to 2 children like a year to almost like say it'll like quadruple their numbers. Numbers are going to quadruple in the amount of number of kids that are lead poisoning because there's a lot more kids that have those lower levels.
Right.
Because again, no amount of lead is safe for a child. And so there is this funding available for those cities that don't have HUD funding like we do, and they're making it easier to be eligible for it by not putting those income like caps on it. And also, whereas we give up to 15, they have a cap, but it's not set. It's kind of like we'll give whatever
Case by case.
It's case by case, and they obviously would have to ask permission. But the key difference is there's no income guidelines.
And so lead poisoning, as we talked about it, it's like a brain development issue. So I guess should adults be concerned?
Yeah, depending on like what they're doing, right? It's depending on their occupations. But again, if they're in an occupation where like they're doing like lead abatement work, they should be getting tested yearly anyway. They're getting their blood tested
So could
to
they
make
see
sure.
effects? So if they're
Yeah,
if they're
so
up in
more
their
so
50s or 60s, could they?
It affects them more like your reproductive system,
Oh, okay.
stuff like But again, children, it's more so developing because their brains are still developing.
So I wonder if you grabbed like 100 adults off the street and tested
And
their blood
tested
for
them?
lead. Like, I wonder if it's like some other things where everybody has it in them. It'd be an interesting thing.
Yeah, it would.
I don't
And you know, me growing up, I grew up in New Haven, and I thought about it. I used to play with those paint chips. I mean, I don't think I ever ate them, but I just remember it was just a thing when, growing up in New Haven, and I have old wood windows. And
Yeah, they're fun to peel. It is.
That
It's
too.
fun to peel it off.
Yes.
I mean, I never
Yeah.
ate it, but I peeled
Right,
paint
yeah.
when I was a kid. Everybody did.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to wrap up this portion with kind of bringing it back to the question. So now I'm a parent. My child tested at, say, 25. The city has come in, told me I have lead. I've taken advantage of the grants. I have abated all the lead in my house, and I've given my child the diet that I've been told. Are his or her numbers lower a year from
depends.
now?
They should
say
be.
there's no other exposure.
Yeah. Mhm.
So it'll
So
naturally
that's why,
come down.
and the thing too is you have to remember, depending on the child's level, there's a time frame of when they need to get retested. So for instance, depending, again, if it's a 20, they might want to get retested in a month, 2 months. There's like a schedule of when they get tested.
And if you're doing everything right, you should see those numbers go
Yes.
down every
Correct.
test. So that's kind of what I was getting at. So, even if there isn't that chelation treatment, with
Yeah.
taking the right steps will.
Correct.
And then is I don't want to say damage because it sounds too strong, but the effects of the lead, is that reversible? Like
No.
No. Okay.
No.
So whatever happened in the brain during that
Yeah.
period of lead poisoning
Yeah.
is kind
Mhm. Yeah,
Huh.
that's why it's so important. That's why
Okay.
you'll see that the levels, before when it was so high, right? And now they're going down because, again, no amount of lead is safe for a child.
Interesting. So, one thing I like to ask sometimes during discussions like this is there anything that I didn't ask, or like any points that we didn't get to that you think is important?
Well,
to
I
get out
do
right
want to
now?
mention too, though, right? It is important about where a child lives, but one of the things I did touch upon, want to touch upon too, is it could be, like ingesting like a toy. There's a recall list. I'm sure you've seen it. Recall list of toys coming from different countries or wherever. Even pottery. It could be simple things like a pottery from a different country that you really shouldn't be eating. It should just be decorative. We've seen that too. So kids can get lead poison from that too. It could be a cultural thing where maybe the kind of medicines that they're using in another country, they're using it, can have high levels of lead as well. There was one family we had, the prenatal vitamins that she was taking had high levels of lead and passed it on to her child. Makeup, some
yeah.
coal, like it's the coal that they use, like the eyeliner, some of that may have lead. So some of that too can cause lead poisoning. So lead is not just in like the home. It could be, again, occupational.
Right.
It could be makeup. It could be pottery. It could be food.
So here's a question I've had for a long time. I don't know if you can answer this, but I was watching a show and they were talking about crystal.
Yeah.
And crystal is glass with lead. That's
Yeah.
what makes it crystal. If I'm, hoity-toity drinking my wine out of a glass, a crystal, glass, do I have a risk of lead from the crystal or not?
That I'm not 100% sure. I
would
never
think-
even thought about that.
I never thought about it either
Yeah.
until I heard that.
Yeah.
I never really cared
But
about how crystal was
the
made.
only way that we even know, like, toys crystal is that it has to get tested.
But it
see.
has to be like defective, right? At the end of the day, there still has to be a mechanism
That,
to.
well, in order to test it, though, like, when I mean, we have to be sure that, say, that crystal has it.
Yeah.
The way that is, you have to give me that crystal, or you have to give me this bowl, and then it gets into lab. What they do is they crush it. They have to pulverize it, so
Right.
it gets destroyed. That's the only way we'll know if something gets tested. But the thing with lead is, remember, it leaches.
Yes.
So what happens is, it may not be defective, but it may leach out. Do you know? And
Yes.
that's how. And then when you put hot water, that's just gonna make it. It's gonna exacerbate it more. That
Right.
lead. That's
Which is why the water company puts something in the water to prevent the lead from leaching from the
Correct.
pipes into the water.
Yes.
Which is why the health department has never found lead in
Yeah.
the water because
Yeah.
our protocol to prevent the leaching actually
Yeah.
works. So this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm now going to turn to what I call 5 unrelated questions because they're completely unrelated to anything we've talked about. Although one of them kind of is because we started talking about food. First unrelated question: do you have any pets?
I do.
What are they?
I have a dog. Her name is Ellie. She's a Shih Tzu.
Oh, Shih Tzu. Okay.
Love her.
How old?
She's 5.
5.
Yeah.
Good dog.
She is. She's very good.
What color is she?
She's mixed. She's like white and like black.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love little Shih Tzus.
Yeah.
After we get off the air, I'll tell you a joke. Who's your favorite band or musician?
It's too many to. I don't even know. You put me on
You
the
could pick
spot.
a couple.
I like old school music. Like I like
Like
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yeah.
I like stylistics.
Huh?
Like I'm very old school. I mean, I love New Edition.
New Edition.
I'm very
Nice.
old school. Yeah.
So do
Yeah,
I.
but when I was growing up, I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this. Like, but when I was growing up, I loved Bobby Brown back in the day.
I think Bobby Brown is a little underappreciated. It's my prerogative to say that.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New Edition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the older I get, the worse the music gets.
Yeah.
So like anything
But that's why I
after
go
like
back, and
2000,
you know what?
I'm like, nope.
My first concert was at the New Haven Coliseum, and it was Whitney Houston, and I'll never
Wow.
forget that. And then I also saw Poison there. So
Okay, so I am totally jealous of you seeing Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
Because literally every time I hear Whitney Houston on the radio, I get sad.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what a waste. But
yeah,
Poison. So
Yes.
you don't know this. If people have listened to this show a little bit, I used to do security at a concert venue. I was backstage security manager. And I will tell you, I did 400 bands in 3 years.
wow,
Never had more fun in my life than
Than a
working Poison
really?
concerts. The guys themselves backstage are just the most fun,
yeah,
normal guys. The concerts themselves are just fun.
yeah,
The confetti and the music is fun. I mean, I love working
Yeah.
Poison concerts.
Yeah.
And Brett Michaels, if you don't know, he's the lead singer of
yes.
Poison. I
Well, do you remember
once-
that show he had?
Oh, yes.
Mhm.
Looking for Love or something.
Something, yeah, Rock of Love.
Rock of Love.
Yeah.
I once told Brett Michaels that he was the prettiest man I had ever seen in my life because he was literally the prettiest man I've ever seen in my life.
That's so funny.
And he was such a nice guy.
Yeah.
I loved working
Yeah.
Poison concerts, and
Yep.
I think they're fantastic.
Well, yeah, so I like any kind of music. Like, I will listen to anything. But, like, like you said, the music nowadays, but, like, I
Some
just
of it.
always go, yeah, some of them. But I always go back to the very, very, like, old school. Yeah.
Yeah, like my daughter's really into Ed Sheeran
Oh,
right
yeah,
now, and,
yeah.
and she's kind of got me to not hate him. I
Yeah.
actually took her to see him, and I was incredibly impressed with his concert
Yeah.
because it's just a short English redheaded guy
Yeah,
on a
he does have
stage with a
yeah.
guitar
Yeah.
for 2 hours, and in 2 nights in New York, he sold 190,000 tickets.
Wow.
Doing something. Right. What is your favorite hobby?
I don't know if this is a hobby, but I don't think it's a hobby, but I love to cook.
I love to cook.
Yeah, I love to cook. So when I had the time, I would take like pictures of my food.
Oh, yeah?
And then people would be like, you didn't make that. I'm like, of course I made it. But yeah, and the good thing about it, and my coworkers could attest to it, is I don't know how to do portion control. So I will cook like I'm cooking for like 30 people. And I'm like, oh my
I
gosh,
do the same thing.
what am I going to do? Because my kids are just like,
See, I have a reason though, because I'll cook a big meal on Sunday and
Yeah.
then eat it for the whole week. That's my lunch for the whole
Yeah.
week. So a lasagna that I make
I just
weighs
made
in at
lasagna
about
last
10 to
night.
12 pounds.
yeah.
Because I eat it all week.
Yeah.
So if the President of the United States is coming over to Glenda's house for dinner, what are you making them?
Ooh.
What's your
My famous,
Yeah.
I make something called my buffalo mac and cheese. And
Oh.
I think that every time I bring it, because the first time I had it, I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's just so good. It's so different. And it's filling. That's all you have to eat is that. You don't have to eat anything else. But everywhere I bring it, like, that's my go-to. Or people will ask me, can you make that for me? And I'm like, yeah, I'll make it for you. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Check the Department of Health's website for the recipe to Glenda's buffalo mac
Mac and cheese.
In the same vein, cookies, brownies, or ice cream. You can only pick one.
Ice cream.
Ice cream. What flavor?
Coffee Oreo from Ashley's in Hamden.
Wow, that's specific.
Yes.
Coffee Oreo.
Yes.
Where is Ashley's in Hamden?
At the plaza.
Okay.
Near Marshall's.
Okay, because my wife got
They
something she
Ashley's
would
has
love.
been there for such a long time, and Ashley is actually named after his dog, Ashley, and it
Oh.
was, I think it was, what is it, a rat? It was a rat hound, or I don't know what it is, but my daughter had the
Rat
same
terrier, maybe?
a rat terrier,
Yeah.
same dog, but that's Ashley's. But
Huh.
yeah, but if you ever have the time, and they have one in, I believe, in Brantford.
Okay.
They have it around, but they have the best. That's my favorite, coffee Oreo. Yeah.
They have not paid us to say this, by the way.
Right.
Last question in the unrelated questions. Who was your favorite teacher and why?
Oh, my favorite teacher. So, I went to St. Brendan School in New Haven. It's on Whaley Ave. And so, in second grade, my teacher was Sister Pia. And I just loved her because she would give us, like, bear hugs. And we also had the same birthday. So that's
Oh,
why
really?
she was my favorite.
Oh, Sister Pia.
Sister Pia.
Any chance Sister Pia is still with us, or
I don't know.
you don't know? So,
I mean,
well,
that was
Sister-
in the 80s.
So, Sister Pia, if you're out there, Glenda
Hi,
loved
Sister
you.
Pia.
So that wraps up our 5 unrelated questions. It actually wraps up our entire interview today. So we always like to end the show talking about the one thing. The one thing I want our listeners today to take away from the show is that lead poisoning is a serious issue, not just in New Haven, but all over, especially if you're living in an older house. But rest assured that the city of New Haven does have a very comprehensive lead program to help identify if lead's an issue in your house and then help you abate that lead if it is an issue. So for more information on that, Glenda, what's the website?
NHV.org.
You could just Google New Haven
New
Department
Haven
of Health,
Health Department.
Health Department, and there's a whole page on lead.
Yes,
on
there
there.
is.
Yeah. So if you want
New
more,
Haven's. I don't think that's it either.
So if you want more information on what we talked about today, go to the Department of Health's website. They do have a whole page on lead. There are professionals like Glenda that are ready to help get your family healthy again if this has become an issue in your family. So with that, thank you for joining us for this week's Liquid Lunch. I'm so glad that you were able to join us, and join us in 2 weeks where we will have another edition of Liquid Lunch. So raise your glass of water and we'll have a toast to staying hydrated, staying healthy, and good conversation.